Hey there, before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it where you are? Wherever you are in the world, this is the perfect time to just relax and let your mind wander. This video is designed to gently guide you into a peaceful state, helping you drift off into a deep, restful sleep, while exploring the fascinating world of memories, where they go when we forget, and if they can ever be found again. So get cozy, dim the lights, and let my voice take you on a calm journey through the mysteries of your mind. Sweet dreams. Memory is not a single function, but a vast, interconnected network of systems that allow us to encode, store, and retrieve information. Shaping who we are, every thought, sensation, and learnt experience passes through this system. But how is this structure built? Deep inside the brain, the hippocampus acts like a librarian, indexing memories and tagging them for future access. Surrounding it, the neocortex stores long-term memories, while the amygdala adds emotional weight to what we remember. The prefrontal cortex, meanwhile, helps organize thoughts and experiences, deciding what deserves attention and what can be discarded. Memory begins with encoding, the process by which sensory input, what we see, hear, or feel, is transformed into a storable form. The brain filters this input through a complex hierarchy. Only a fraction of what we experience is actually encoded, and even less is stored long-term. There are different types of memory. Episodic memory, which stores personal events. Semantic memory, which holds facts and general knowledge. Procedural memory, responsible for skills and actions. Each has its own pathway, involving different parts of the brain, yet all contribute to the intricate architecture we call memory. Neurons communicate through synapses, tiny gaps where chemical messengers called neurotransmitters pass signals. When a memory forms, synaptic connections strengthen. This is known as long-term potentiation, a key mechanism behind learning and memory. The more we recall a memory, the stronger the connection becomes. But the brain is not a perfect archive. It's selective, adaptive, and prone to distortion. Our memories are not stored like files in a cabinet. Instead, they are reconstructed each time we remember, like puzzles we piece together using past impressions, emotions, and context. This fluidity is both a strength and a vulnerability. It allows us to learn and adapt, but also makes our memories susceptible to change, decay, and even complete loss. Understanding how memory is structured lays the groundwork for exploring what happens when it fails. In the chapters ahead, we'll uncover the mystery of forgetting, not as a weakness of the mind, but as an essential and even purposeful process of human cognition. Before a memory can be stored, it must first be born. This process, known as encoding, is where everything begins. It is the transformation of experience into a neural pattern, the conversion of the physical world into the internal language of the brain. Without encoding, memory cannot exist. We would live moment to moment with no trace of where we came from or what we just saw. Encoding is how reality becomes remembrance. It begins with attention. The brain is constantly bombarded with information from all five senses, millions of bits every second, but attention acts as a spotlight, illuminating only a small portion of this data to be processed more deeply. When we focus on a conversation in a noisy room, or take in the details of a painting, we are giving that experience a chance to become memory. Without attention, there is no entry point. That's why we often forget things we never truly noticed in the first place. Once attention has selected what to focus on, the brain begins translating that input into a neural code. Visual stimuli are processed in the occipital lobes, sounds in the temporal lobes, touch in the parietal lobes. The hippocampus, nestled deep in the brain's medial temporal lobe, takes in this multisensory information and starts forming a cohesive trace. It doesn't store the memory itself, but it acts as a kind of editor and connector, tagging the experience with context, time, and emotional value, and sending it off to the appropriate storage areas in the cortex. Encoding can happen in different ways. Sometimes it is automatic. We remember the route we take every day without effort. We remember the taste of our favourite food without needing to try. But other times, encoding is effortful. Learning a new language, memorising a speech, studying for an exam, these require conscious repetition and rehearsal. The brain must be convinced that this information is important enough to keep. One of the most powerful influences on encoding is emotion. Emotional arousal activates the amygdala, which works alongside the hippocampus to prioritize emotionally significant events. That's why we often remember where we were during major life events or tragedies. Emotion makes memories more vivid, more durable, more accessible. But it can also distort under stress or fear. The encoding process may become chaotic, and the memory that forms may be fragmented or inaccurate. Repetition also strengthens encoding. Each time we rehearse a memory, whether by thinking about it, writing it down, or talking about it, we deepen the neural pathways involved. This is known as elaborative rehearsal, not just repeating the information, but connecting it to existing knowledge, making associations, creating meaning. For example, remembering a new name is easier when we link it to a familiar word or image. The brain thrives on patterns, context, and relevance. But encoding is not just about input, it's about transformation. The brain doesn't store exact replicas of experiences. It stores representations. These are compressed, interpreted, and often simplified versions of the original. Think of memory like a painting rather than a photograph, constructed from raw impressions, but shaped by interpretation. Two people can witness the same event and encode it differently, based on their focus, mood, background, and expectations. Sleep plays a surprising role in the encoding process. While we are awake, the brain is busy gathering information. But during sleep, especially deep and REM stages, the brain consolidates and reorganizes these new traces. Neural patterns are replayed, connections are strengthened, and unnecessary information is pruned. Without sleep, encoding suffers. This is why sleep deprivation makes it harder to concentrate, learn, and form new memories. Attention, emotion, repetition, context, and sleep. These are the cornerstones of successful encoding. And yet, even under ideal conditions, encoding is not foolproof. It is fallible, subjective, and easily influenced. Memories can be altered before they are even formed. We may encode false details, overlook the obvious, or remember things that never truly happened. Encoding is the brain's way of making sense of experience. It is not just a process of storing facts, but a way of organizing the world into meaningful, retrievable patterns. What we choose to encode, consciously or not, defines our memories, our knowledge, and ultimately our identity. Every skill we master, every face we remember, every moment that lingers in our minds started with encoding. And when encoding fails, the memory may never exist at all. We may believe we've forgotten something, when in truth it was never truly recorded to begin with. This is the silent cost of distraction, the subtle erasure of experience that never made it past the threshold of attention. As we'll see in the next chapter, not all memories are meant to last, and some never get a chance to begin. The human brain is an extraordinary machine, capable of storing decades of memories, emotions, knowledge, and experiences. But beneath its power lies a delicate balancing act between what is kept for just a moment and what is preserved for a lifetime. This chapter explores that fragile bridge between short-term and long-term memory, the transitional space where fleeting awareness either fades into oblivion or becomes a permanent part of who we are. Imagine your consciousness as a river, and your attention as a small boat drifting along the surface. Information, sounds, sights, words, ideas floats past constantly. Most of it never touches the boat, but some of it is scooped up and briefly examined. That brief moment where something enters the mind and lingers for just a few seconds is what we call short-term memory. Short-term memory is the mental scratchpad of the mind. It is limited in both capacity and duration. It typically holds about 7 items, give or take 2, a fact discovered by psychologist George Miller in the 1950s and often referred to as the magical number 7. This is why phone numbers, license plates and passwords are often designed to stay within that limit. But even more important than how much short-term memory can hold is how long it holds it. Without conscious effort, a short-term memory lasts just 10 to 20 seconds before it begins to decay. It's like writing something in sand near the ocean. One wave and it's gone. Short-term memory is often confused with working memory, but the two are not identical. Working memory is more dynamic. It not only holds information, but manipulates it, allowing you to solve math problems in your head, follow a conversation, or keep track of a plot while reading a novel. It is the workspace of thought, and yet even working memory is a temporary stage. Like actors on a stage, items in working memory are actively performing, but they cannot stay forever. They must either exit or transition to the more enduring system, long-term memory. Crossing the bridge from short-term to long-term memory is not automatic. It requires encoding, effort, attention, or sometimes emotional weight. This bridge is delicate. Most information we encounter does not make it across. We forget the name of someone we just met. We lose track of what we were about to say. The bridge collapses unless something reinforces the path. How does information actually make that leap? Repetition plays a central role. When we rehearse something repeatedly, whether it's a phone number, a line of dialogue, or a list of items, the brain takes notice. Repetition strengthens synaptic connections, helping to stabilize the neural pattern. The more we repeat it, the more likely it will become embedded in long-term storage. But not all repetition is equal. Mindless repetition, rote memorization, is less effective than elaborative rehearsal, where we connect new information to existing knowledge, ask questions, create analogies, and build meaningful associations. Emotion is another powerful factor. Events that carry emotional intensity, whether joy, fear, anger, or awe, are more likely to be remembered. This is because the amygdala, which processes emotion, becomes highly active during emotional experiences and interacts closely with the hippocampus, the brain's memory processor. This is why you can remember where you were during a life-changing moment, but forget what you had for lunch last Tuesday. Emotion reinforces the bridge, strengthens the structure, and flags the memory for preservation. Sleep also plays a vital role in memory consolidation, the process by which fragile short-term memories are transformed into stable long-term ones. During sleep, especially deep sleep and REM stages, the brain replays patterns of neural activity that occurred during the day. It's almost like the brain is performing a nightly backup of critical information. Without adequate sleep, the consolidation process is disrupted, and memories that might otherwise have crossed into permanence remain in limbo or vanish. Once a memory becomes long-term, where does it go? Unlike a digital hard drive with neat folders and storage sectors, the brain stores long-term memories in a distributed, overlapping fashion. Visual elements might be stored in one area, sounds in another, emotions in a third. Recall is an act of reconstruction, pulling together fragments to recreate a coherent whole. And because of this, long-term memories are not fixed. They can be updated, reshaped, and even overwritten each time we remember them. But long-term memory is not invincible. Just as the bridge from short-term to long-term is fragile, so too is the structure of long-term memory itself. Memories can degrade over time through decay, interference, or reconsolidation errors. Sometimes a memory remains intact but cannot be retrieved. Other times it may have been altered so many times that it no longer resembles the original event. This is why eyewitness accounts, despite the confidence they often carry, can be surprisingly inaccurate. The interaction between short-term and long-term memory reflects a constant dialogue in the brain. The short-term system is fast, agile, and temporary, a triage center that decides what information is worth keeping. The long-term system is slower, more stable, and more permanent, holding everything from our childhood stories to the facts we learned in school. Between them lies a fragile, invisible bridge a transition zone filled with uncertainty. Understanding this bridge offers more than just insight into how memory works. It offers practical tools for how to remember better. By focusing our attention, engaging deeply with what we learn, adding emotional context, sleeping well, and rehearsing strategically, we can strengthen that bridge and help more of our experiences become lasting memories. Yet, despite all our efforts, forgetting remains inevitable. The brain must forget to function. It must filter, erase, and discard in order to stay flexible, to adapt, and to learn anew. Some memories are simply not needed. Others fade so something more important can take their place. In the chapters to come, we'll explore why forgetting isn't just a failure of memory, but a necessary feature of the mind. We'll look at how memories are weakened, overwritten, or locked away, and what this tells us about who we are and how our minds evolve over time. To forget is often seen as a weakness, an error, a failing of the mind, a tragic lapse in the otherwise powerful machinery of memory. But what if forgetting isn't a flaw at all? What if, in fact, forgetting is one of the brain's most essential functions? In this chapter, we will uncover the surprising reality that forgetting is not merely a side effect of an imperfect brain. It is a carefully orchestrated process, a function sculpted by evolution to help us survive, adapt, and stay mentally agile in a world overflowing with information. Imagine waking up and remembering every face you've seen, every conversation you've overheard, every object in every room you've ever walked into. The weight of all that information would be paralyzing. It would bury you in a mountain of noise, making it nearly impossible to find what truly matters. The ability to forget is what allows us to focus. It is what helps us prioritize, filter, and function. Our brains are not built to store everything. They are built to store meaning. Forgetting is part of the brain's editing process. Like a skilled film director, the brain decides which scenes to keep, which to cut, and which to blur out into background noise. This is not a sign of inefficiency, this is efficiency. From a biological perspective, forgetting serves several critical purposes. First, it frees up mental resources. Neural pathways are not infinite. The brain must be selective about what it retains in long-term memory. If irrelevant details or outdated information stayed permanently accessible, our mental processing would slow, our creativity would stagnate, and our ability to respond to new situations would be compromised. Second, forgetting protects us from emotional overload. Traumatic or painful memories can be debilitating if recalled too vividly or too often. The brain has evolved mechanisms, some conscious, others automatic, to fade or suppress these memories over time. This doesn't mean the memory is erased. Rather, it is pushed into the background where it loses its emotional intensity and becomes less likely to interfere with daily life. The hippocampus and prefrontal cortex play crucial roles in the decision-making processes that determine what stays and what goes. But perhaps even more fascinating is the process of synaptic pruning, a natural trimming of the brain's neural connections. When we learn something new, neurons fire and form new connections. But if those connections are not used, they weaken and eventually disappear. This is not degeneration, this is optimization. The brain prunes unused pathways to strengthen the ones that matter most. Forgetting is also essential for learning. Without it, we would struggle to form new memories because there would be too much interference from old ones. This is known as proactive interference, where past information makes it harder to encode new information. Forgetting helps us clear the slate, make room for new knowledge, and refine what we already know. Memory is not a static vault. It is a dynamic, ever-changing system. Each time we recall a memory, we are not simply replaying it, we are reconstructing it. And in the act of reconstruction, details shift, fade, or are filled in with new information. This is not a defect. This is how the brain keeps memories relevant. It updates them like software, altering details to fit current beliefs, knowledge, and context. There is even a term in cognitive neuroscience called adaptive forgetting. The idea that forgetting enhances decision-making and learning by reducing clutter and focusing attention on the most useful or frequently accessed memories. This principle has been demonstrated in artificial intelligence as well, where forgetting algorithms are implemented in machine learning to optimize performance. But what about pathological forgetting, like in Alzheimer's disease or amnesia? These conditions do reveal the devastating consequences when memory systems break down. However, they are not proof that forgetting is inherently bad. Instead, they highlight what happens when the balance between memory and forgetting is lost. Healthy forgetting is selective, purposeful, and constructive. In contrast, pathological forgetting is indiscriminate, chaotic, and destructive. Psychologically, forgetting can also be an act of healing. In psychotherapy, patients often work through repressed or painful memories to either understand them more clearly or let them go. The brain's ability to suppress certain memories until they can be processed safely is an example of how forgetting serves emotional resilience. Culturally, forgetting allows us to move on. Societies forget outdated customs, obsolete knowledge, and historical grievances to evolve and progress. This kind of forgetting is sometimes controversial, but it demonstrates that the principle is not limited to individuals. On both personal and collective levels, forgetting can act as a reset button, a tool for renewal. So the next time you walk into a room and forget why you went there, or you struggle to recall a detail from a conversation last week, don't be too hard on yourself. What you're experiencing is not failure. It's the brain doing what it was designed to do. It is managing its resources, protecting your emotional well-being, and preparing you for the future. Forgetting, when it works correctly, is not the enemy of memory. It is its partner. Together, remembering and forgetting form the rhythm of cognition, the ebb and flow of thought. In a sense, forgetting is the price we pay for clarity. It is the cost of a mind that adapts, evolves, and continues to grow. In the next chapter, we will examine the biological roots of forgetting even more closely, diving into the molecular and cellular mechanics of how memories fade and how the brain decides what to keep and what to let go. Every second of your life, your brain is making decisions, not just decisions about what to do or say, but deeper, quieter choices about what to keep and what to let go. One of the most fascinating and essential processes within your brain is synaptic pruning, the purposeful deletion of neural connections. It sounds destructive, but in truth, it's a form of intelligent design, a biological version of cleaning out the cluttered attic to make room for what really matters. Synaptic pruning is the brain's way of refining itself. When we are born, our brains are overflowing with connections. In early childhood, there are more synapses, those tiny junctions where neurons communicate, than we will ever need. This period of synaptic overproduction gives us the potential to learn anything, any language, any skill, any way of understanding the world. But potential is not purpose. As we grow, the brain begins to trim back the connections that are not used, strengthening those that are repeated, relevant, and reinforced. This process doesn't stop with childhood. Though most synaptic pruning happens in early development, it continues into adolescence and even adulthood, especially in brain regions involved in decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. It's a quiet sculptor working behind the scenes, shaping the very architecture of thought. But pruning isn't just about efficiency, it's about adaptability. Imagine trying to find an important message in an inbox, flooded with irrelevant emails. A brain overloaded with unused connections would be slower, more confused, and less precise. By pruning synapses, the brain prioritizes clarity. It refines learning, deepens understanding, and improves performance. Yet, as with all powerful tools, pruning can have a darker side. When the process becomes excessive or misdirected, it can lead to memory loss or even neurological disease. In Alzheimer's disease, for instance, recent studies suggest that overactive pruning mechanisms might contribute to the loss of synapses critical to memory. the very system meant to preserve cognitive function becomes a participant in its decline. Synaptic pruning is also tied to developmental disorders. In autism spectrum disorder, ASD, there is evidence that pruning may be insufficient, leading to an overload of synaptic connections that interfere with efficient brain communication. In schizophrenia, the pruning process may go too far during adolescence, contributing to the cognitive and perceptual disturbances that characterize the disorder. But under normal circumstances, pruning is a masterpiece of neural efficiency. It is informed by experience. The connections you strengthen are the ones you use, the words you speak daily, the routes you travel, the skills you practice, the ones you neglect, the forgotten song lyrics, the unused algebra, the foreign language abandoned in high school, are marked for deletion. This is how forgetting begins. Not all at once, but quietly, synapse by synapse, a memory becomes harder to retrieve, then less vivid. Eventually it slips beneath the surface of consciousness altogether. The trace may still exist somewhere, buried in the folds of the cortex, but without active use, the access points have faded. The path is grown over, like a trail in the forest left untrodden for too long. Importantly, pruning is not just passive forgetting, it is active curation. The brain doesn't just lose things, it chooses what to let go. This means that memory loss, especially at the subtle level, is not always a failure. Often it is a feature. It reflects what your brain has judged to be less relevant, less important, or simply unnecessary in the context of your current life. This has implications for how we learn. Practice doesn't just make perfect, it makes permanent. The more you revisit, rephrase and reapply knowledge, the more likely it is to be retained. Conversely, what you ignore is pruned. Learning is not just addition, it is also subtraction, a dynamic process of building and cutting, engraving and erasing. Synaptic pruning reminds us that memory is not static. It is an ongoing negotiation between the brain and experience. It is shaped by use, context, and need. What we remember is as much about what we forget as it is about what we hold on to. And often, the brain's recycling bin is not a place of loss, but of liberation, freeing up mental space for the thoughts that matter most. In the next chapter, we will follow memory as it fades into the shadows of the unconscious mind, exploring how some memories don't disappear, but simply hide, and what it means when the mind forgets, but the body remembers. There are memories that fade gently over time, softened by distance, like ink left too long in the sun. But then there are memories that vanish more forcefully, as if dragged under by unseen currents. Trauma lives in the shadows of the mind, where memory and survival collide. Unlike ordinary forgetting, the disappearance of traumatic memories is an act of defense, a psychological shield that prioritizes survival over clarity. In this chapter, we step into the fog of suppressed memory, the neural twilight where the mind hides what it cannot handle. Trauma is not just a psychological event, it is a physiological one. When a traumatic experience occurs, the body floods with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These chemicals are part of the fight or flight response, and they prepare the body to survive, but they also affect the way memories are encoded. The hippocampus, the brain's memory librarian, becomes overwhelmed. The amygdala, the emotional alarm system, takes over. As a result, the memory of the trauma can be fragmented, distorted, or sealed away entirely. This is what scientists call dissociative amnesia, the inability to recall important personal information, usually related to a traumatic or stressful event. Unlike ordinary forgetting, dissociative amnesia is not the result of time or disuse. It is a wall erected by the brain to protect the self from overwhelming pain. Sometimes it is partial. Certain details vanish while others remain. In more severe cases, entire stretches of time are erased. Memory suppression is not always total. Often, traumatic memories are stored implicitly, meaning they are inaccessible to conscious thought, but still present in the body and behavior. This is the haunting truth behind the phrase, "the body keeps the score." Survivors of trauma may not remember the event clearly, or at all, but they may experience nightmares, anxiety, unexplained fear, or somatic symptoms that echo the original trauma. Neuroscience has begun to uncover the biological mechanisms behind this phenomenon. One key player is the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for regulation and decision-making. In trauma, the prefrontal cortex often becomes underactive, while the amygdala becomes hyperactive. This imbalance leads to a brain stuck in survival mode, suppressing memories that are too intense to process. Meanwhile, the hippocampus may shrink over time, further impairing memory consolidation. But trauma does not just erase, it can also distort. Traumatic memories, when recalled, often lack the narrative cohesion of ordinary memories. They may return in fragments, triggered by sounds, smells, or seemingly unrelated events. These fragments are not like the tidy files of normal memory. They are shards, raw, vivid, and often terrifying. This is one reason why flashbacks are so disorienting. They are not just memories, but relivings. Therapeutic practices such as EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, trauma-informed CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and somatic therapies are designed to gently bring these memories back into conscious awareness, allowing the individual to process and reintegrate them. Healing often involves not just remembering, but remembering safely. Culturally and historically, trauma-induced forgetting has appeared again and again in soldiers returning from war, in survivors of abuse, in communities affected by genocide and disaster. The silence that follows trauma is not always voluntary, it is often neurological. The brain buries what the soul cannot yet face, and yet the vanishing of memory is never the end of the story. Many people recover traumatic memories years or even decades later, prompted by therapy, reflection, or life events that reopen closed chapters. When these memories surface, they are often confusing and painful, but they also offer a path to understanding, to integration, and ultimately to healing. The mind is not simply a record keeper, it is a guardian. It decides what to show and what to hide, what to remember and what to forget. In trauma, this power becomes a matter of psychological survival. The vanishing mind is not broken, it is trying to protect us. In the next chapter, we will explore how memory re-emerges, the strange return of what was once lost. We'll ask, can forgotten memories truly come back intact, or do they change in the act of remembering? And what happens when we begin to remember things we wish had stayed buried? Imagine waking up in a hospital room, unsure of your name, your past, or why you're there. Imagine recognizing the world around you. A flower, a chair, a sunny window, yet feeling like a stranger in your own life. Amnesia is one of the most dramatic expressions of memory loss, a sudden void where identity and continuity once existed. It severs the threads of the self, unraveling the archives of who we were, and leaving only the present moment. In this chapter, we journey into the lost corridors of the mind, exploring the science, mystery, and implications of amnesia. Amnesia is not one singular condition. It is an umbrella term that encompasses several forms of memory loss, each with its own triggers and mechanisms. The two most well-known forms are anterograde amnesia, where the individual cannot form new memories after an event, and retrograde amnesia, where past memories are erased. There are also more complex presentations: transient global amnesia, dissociative amnesia, infantile amnesia, and induced amnesia caused by trauma, illness, or medical intervention. In anterograde amnesia, the past is often preserved, but the future remains inaccessible. The person wakes up each day forgetting the day before, like a mind trapped in a loop. This condition often results from damage to the hippocampus, the brain's memory encoding center. Without it functioning properly, short-term experiences cannot be transformed into long-term memories. One of the most studied cases is that of Henry Molaison, known in the literature as H.M. Sickerman, who lost the ability to form new memories after an experimental brain surgery in 1953. Until his death decades later, he lived in an eternal present, aware that something was wrong, but unable to grasp the full scope of his condition. Retrograde amnesia, on the other hand, involves the loss of previously stored memories. This can affect years, months, or mere moments before an injury or trauma. Often, memories closer to the time of the incident are more fragile, while older, more deeply consolidated memories remain intact. The brain appears to store older memories in distributed networks, particularly in the neocortex, whereas recent memories rely more heavily on the hippocampus and surrounding structures. When trauma or disease disrupts these systems, the recent past is often the first to go. But memory isn't stored like files in a cabinet. It is layered, sensory, emotional. In retrograde amnesia, people may forget personal events yet retain skills, habits, and learned knowledge. This divide between declarative memory, facts, events, and procedural memory, skills, actions, is one of the most intriguing aspects of the condition. A pianist may forget her childhood, but still play a flawless sonata. A man may forget his name, but tie his shoes without hesitation. These preserved abilities hint at the distributed, modular nature of memory in the brain. There are also psychogenic amnesias, where psychological factors, rather than physical damage, cause memory loss, often triggered by trauma, extreme stress, or emotional conflict. These forms can result in people forgetting their identity, location, or history, a condition sometimes romanticized in fiction but quite real. Dissociative fugue, for instance, may lead someone to travel far from home, take on a new identity, and remember nothing of their former life. Though rare, these episodes reveal the powerful link between identity, memory, and the subconscious mind's capacity to shield itself from emotional pain. Transient global amnesia, TGA, is a brief but intense form of memory loss, where an individual suddenly cannot form new memories and may repeatedly ask the same questions. It lasts for only a few hours but can be deeply unsettling. The exact cause remains unclear, though theories suggest transient disruptions in blood flow or temporary seizures in the brain's memory centers. It serves as a stark reminder that our sense of continuity, our narrative thread, can unravel without warning. What causes these diverse amnesias? The list is vast. Head injuries, strokes, brain infections, surgery, epilepsy, tumors, electroconvulsive therapy, alcoholism, Korsakoff syndrome, and psychological trauma. Even certain drugs and sleep deprivation can mimic amnesic symptoms. Despite the differences in cause, the result is often the same, a breach in the timeline of a life. The emotional impact of amnesia cannot be overstated. To lose memory is to lose context. Family becomes unfamiliar. Achievements seem hollow. Even one's sense of self becomes fragile. Identity is, at its core, a memory-driven construct. Without memory, we are stories without authors. Yet amnesia is not always total, nor is it always permanent. Some memories may return with time, therapy, or sensory cues. Familiar smells, old photographs, or a song from childhood can sometimes breach the wall of forgetting. The re-emergence of memory, however partial, is often accompanied by intense emotion, grief for what was lost, joy for what is remembered, and fear of losing it all again. In fiction, amnesia is often a device for suspense or reinvention. In reality, it is a condition that invites deep philosophical questions. Who are we without our memories? If our past is erased, does the person we were still exist? Can we build a new self in the absence of the old one? For those living with amnesia, these questions are not abstract. They are daily struggles, defining the shape of each day. Modern neuroscience continues to explore ways to restore memory, from brain stimulation techniques to memory prosthetics and AI-assisted cognitive rehabilitation. The goal is to help people reclaim their lost archives. But science also teaches us humility. Some memories may never return, and in those silences, we are left to reinvent ourselves, to write new chapters with the tools we still possess. Amnesia teaches us that memory is both fragile and resilient. It can be lost in a moment, and yet, in some cases, built again from fragments. It reminds us that the mind is not a perfect record, but a living story, subject to change, interruption, and revival. In the next chapter, we delve into the unconscious mind, where lost memories may sleep, not erased but hidden. We'll explore the science of implicit memory, and how we often remember without knowing we remember at all. Sleep is one of the great mysteries of life. We spend roughly 1/3 of our existence asleep, a seemingly passive state when our bodies rest and recover. Yet beneath the surface, sleep is a bustling world of activity, especially for memory. It is the time when our brains sift through the day's experiences, deciding what to keep, what to discard, and how to weave fragments into coherent stories. Dreams are the visible tip of this iceberg, a swirling theatre where memories, emotions, and unconscious thoughts come alive. In this chapter, we journey into the nocturnal realm to understand how sleep and dreams shape what we remember and what we forget. The study of sleep and memory has transformed our understanding of how the brain consolidates information. Memory consolidation is the process by which short-term memories are stabilized and integrated into long-term storage. This process occurs most actively during sleep, particularly during specific stages known as slow-wave sleep, SWS, and rapid eye movement REM sleep. During slow-wave sleep, the brain exhibits slow synchronized waves of electrical activity. This phase is thought to be critical for consolidating declarative memories, facts, events, and knowledge. Studies have shown that during SWS, the hippocampus, where new memories are initially encoded, replays the day's experiences, effectively rehearsing and transferring them to the neocortex for long-term storage. This replay is not a passive echo, but an active reprocessing, strengthening connections and embedding memories more deeply. REM sleep, in contrast, is associated with vivid dreaming and heightened brain activity resembling wakefulness. It plays a crucial role in consolidating emotional and procedural memories, skills, habits, and emotional responses. During REM, the brain integrates new information with existing memories, often in bizarre or symbolic ways, which may explain the surreal and fragmented nature of dreams. The connection between dreams and memory is complex. Some theories propose that dreams serve as a simulation environment where the brain tests scenarios, solves problems, or processes emotional conflicts. Others suggest that dreams are a byproduct of memory consolidation, the brain's way of rehearsing and reorganizing data while offline. Regardless, the content of dreams often draws on fragments of recent memories mingled with distant ones, emotional experiences, and even random neural noise. Research also shows that disrupting sleep can impair memory consolidation. Sleep deprivation, whether due to lifestyle, stress, or medical conditions, leads to difficulties in learning, retaining new information, and recalling past memories. This highlights the importance of sleep hygiene for cognitive health and emotional well-being. Beyond consolidation, sleep may also play a role in forgetting. Some scientists theorize that during sleep, the brain actively prunes weak or irrelevant synapses, a nighttime counterpart to the synaptic pruning discussed earlier. This selective forgetting helps prevent memory overload and keeps neural networks efficient. Interestingly, sleep patterns and their effects on memory change across the lifespan. Infants and children spend much more time in REM sleep, consistent with their rapid learning and brain development. Older adults often experience fragmented sleep and reductions in slow-wave sleep, which may contribute to memory difficulties. Dreams themselves have fascinated humans for millennia. From ancient cultures interpreting dreams as divine messages, to modern psychologists viewing them as windows into the unconscious, dreams remain a rich field of study. While not all dreams are memorable, those that are often reflect emotional concerns, unresolved conflicts, or rehearsal of future events. Recent advances in neuroscience are beginning to map the brain regions involved in dreaming and memory consolidation. Techniques like functional MRI and EEG have revealed coordinated activity between the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex during sleep stages. These findings suggest that dreams and memory are intertwined processes, emerging from the brain's efforts to organize the chaos of experience. Moreover, the phenomenon of lucid dreaming, where the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming and can sometimes control the dream, opens new possibilities for exploring memory and consciousness. Some experimental therapies use lucid dreaming to treat nightmares and trauma by rewriting traumatic memories in the dream state. In sum, sleep and dreams are not merely passive rest, but dynamic stages for memory processing. They are where the mind weaves the tapestry of our personal narrative, blending the day's moments with the deep fabric of experience. Understanding these processes not only sheds light on memory itself, but also offers paths to improve learning, emotional regulation, and mental health. In the next chapter, we will explore the shadowy realm of unconscious memory, how memories can influence us without conscious awareness, shaping behavior, emotions, and decisions in ways we rarely recognize. Imagine standing in front of a familiar bookshelf, trying to find a particular book, but no matter how hard you look, it's just out of reach. The book is there, but you can't grasp it. This frustrating experience mirrors what happens in the brain during retrieval failure, the moment when a memory is stored somewhere within the neural archives, but the pathway to access it feels blocked or unclear. Memory retrieval is a complex cognitive process that allows us to access stored information and bring it back into conscious awareness. It's not simply a matter of having a memory encoded and waiting passively. Instead, the brain actively reconstructs memories by pulling together fragments scattered across various neural networks. The success or failure of retrieval depends on numerous factors, including how memories were encoded, how often they've been recalled, the context in which retrieval occurs, and the state of the brain at the moment of recall. The anatomy of memory retrieval. To understand why retrieval sometimes fails, we must first explore the brain regions involved. Retrieval largely engages the prefrontal cortex, which acts like an executive director, guiding the search for relevant information. The hippocampus plays a crucial role as a coordinator, helping to bind different elements of a memory together from distributed cortical sites. The parietal lobes contribute by orienting attention toward the memory cues and supporting conscious awareness of the memory. When retrieval is successful, these brain areas synchronize their activity, forming a network that reconstructs the memory vividly. But when access fails, this network can falter due to weak connections, interference, or damage. Tip of the tongue phenomenon, the frustration of partial retrieval. One of the most common examples of retrieval failure is the tip of the tongue TOT phenomenon. You know that you know something, a name, a fact, a phrase, but the memory remains stubbornly out of reach. Neurologically, TOT states involve partial activation of memory traces, where some components of the memory, such as the meaning or associated context, are activated, but the precise details, like the exact word, cannot be retrieved. Research shows increased activity in the prefrontal cortex during TOT states, reflecting the brain's effort to search and monitor for the elusive memory. Interestingly, this state is often accompanied by a feeling of imminent recall, indicating that the memory is near, but not fully accessible. Context-dependent retrieval and encoding specificity. One of the key insights into why retrieval fails lies in the principle of encoding specificity. Memories are most easily retrieved when the context at recall matches the context at encoding. Context includes external environmental cues, internal states like mood, and physiological conditions. For example, you might remember a conversation you had at a cafe more easily when you return to that cafe. When the retrieval context differs significantly from the encoding context, the cues needed to trigger memory reconstruction are weakened or absent, leading to retrieval failure. This is why you may forget something in one place, but recall it instantly in another. Interference. The thief of recall. Another major culprit behind retrieval failure is interference. The brain stores countless memories, many similar or overlapping in content. Sometimes memories compete during retrieval, making it difficult to isolate the target memory. There are two main types of interference. Proactive interference, where older memories disrupt recall of newer information, and retroactive interference, where new memories impair the recall of older ones. Interference can cause confusion, blending, or complete blockage of retrieval, especially when memories are weak or not well consolidated. The role of neurotransmitters and brain health. Neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical messengers, are critical to effective memory retrieval. Acetylcholine, for example, facilitates attention and memory encoding, while dopamine modulates motivation and the salience of memories. Disruptions in neurotransmitter systems, such as those seen in Alzheimer's disease, depression, or aging, can impair retrieval processes. Brain health, including factors like blood flow, inflammation, and neural plasticity, also affects retrieval efficiency. Poor sleep, stress, or injury can reduce the brain's ability to access memories, even if they remain stored. Retrieval and false memories. When access goes wrong, retrieval is not always a perfect replay, it is a reconstructive process. Sometimes retrieval errors occur, resulting in false memories, recollections of events or details that never happened or are distorted. These errors arise because the brain fills gaps with plausible information, influenced by expectations, suggestions, or existing beliefs. False memories illustrate that memory retrieval is dynamic and malleable, and failures of access can sometimes lead to fabrications rather than just forgetting. Therapeutic and technological avenues for improving retrieval. Advances in neuroscience and technology are beginning to offer ways to enhance retrieval. Techniques like transcranial magnetic stimulation target brain areas involved in recall, potentially improving access. Cognitive training, mnemonic devices, and cueing strategies help individuals strengthen retrieval pathways. In conditions like dementia or brain injury, therapies focus on cue-dependent recall, environmental supports, and sometimes pharmacological interventions to boost neurotransmitter function. When memories seem lost forever. Some retrieval failures result from physical damage to memory-related brain regions, such as hippocampal lesions or diffuse neural degeneration. In these cases, memories may be irretrievable, not because the brain cannot find them, but because the storage system itself is damaged. This distinction highlights the difference between access failure and storage failure, a critical concept in memory research. The puzzle of conscious access. Finally, retrieval involves bringing memories into conscious awareness. But many memories influence behavior and thought unconsciously. Sometimes, the brain's inability to access a memory consciously doesn't mean it's lost entirely. It might still affect decisions, emotions, or skills subliminally. This leads to fascinating questions about the boundary between conscious and unconscious memory, and how much of what shapes us lies just beyond our reach. Forgetting is an experience so familiar that we often take it for granted. Yet the question of whether forgotten memories can ever be truly recovered remains one of the most intriguing mysteries of the human mind. When a memory slips away, whether it's a childhood event, a face, or an important detail, we instinctively wonder if it is lost forever or if it still exists somewhere in the recesses of our brain, waiting patiently for the right moment to return. The science behind memory recovery is complex, shaped by the biological realities of how memories form, how they fade, and how they can sometimes become hidden or inaccessible. In this chapter, we journey through the scientific discoveries, therapeutic approaches, controversies, and hopes that surround the quest to reclaim forgotten memories. At the heart of this exploration is the understanding that memory is not a perfect recording stored like data on a hard drive. Instead, memory is an active, reconstructive process shaped by biology, experience, and time. When we recall something, our brain does not retrieve an exact copy. It rebuilds the memory from fragments spread across different regions. This means memories are fluid, susceptible to strengthening, weakening, alteration, or even distortion. So when a memory is forgotten, it may not be erased completely. Instead, it might have become inaccessible due to a variety of factors. The weakening of neural pathways, lack of cues for retrieval, interference from other memories, or psychological mechanisms like repression. One major reason memories fade over time relates to the biological foundation of memory itself. Memories are encoded as networks of neurons connected by synapses, forming what scientists call engrams. These physical traces can weaken through a natural process called synaptic decay or pruning, especially if a memory is rarely recalled or reinforced. This is a normal and necessary function of the brain, preventing overload and allowing for cognitive efficiency. Imagine a library where rarely checked out books are archived deeper or discarded altogether to make space for new information. However, this biological fading does not always mean memories are irretrievable. The brain's plasticity, the ability to reorganize and form new connections, sometimes allows old memories to be reactivated or strengthened again under the right conditions. Retrieval of memories often depends heavily on cues, stimuli or contexts that were present during the original encoding of the memory. Psychologists have demonstrated through numerous studies that the similarity between the learning and recall environment greatly affects memory access. This phenomenon is known as encoding specificity. For example, the scent of a certain perfume, the sound of a song, or revisiting a childhood place can unexpectedly trigger a cascade of memories previously thought lost. Such cues work by activating the associated neural networks, effectively unlocking the mental vault where memories are stored. This is why sometimes a forgotten face or a long-lost word suddenly pops back into awareness, seemingly from nowhere. But not all memories are forgotten simply because of decay or poor cues. Some memories become actively suppressed or repressed. Sigmund Freud first proposed repression as a defense mechanism where the mind pushes distressing or traumatic memories out of conscious awareness to protect itself from psychological pain. While the concept remains controversial, clinical evidence shows that traumatic memories can indeed become difficult to access consciously, yet still influence emotions and behavior in subtle ways. Recovery of such memories through therapy or other methods can sometimes bring relief and understanding, but also raises risks related to memory accuracy. Various approaches have been developed to recover forgotten memories, especially in therapeutic or forensic contexts. Hypnosis has been used with the aim of bypassing conscious defenses and accessing deeper layers of memory. While hypnosis can enhance recall, it is a double-edged sword. The relaxed and suggestible state can increase the risk of creating false memories. This makes hypnosis a contentious tool for memory recovery, requiring careful and ethical application. Similarly, guided imagery and relaxation techniques aim to create mental states conducive to memory retrieval by gently prompting the mind to explore forgotten areas. Cognitive interviewing, used in law enforcement, involves asking witnesses detailed and open-ended questions to maximize accurate recall without leading or suggesting answers. This method relies on the brain's ability to retrieve fragmented memories when given the right verbal cues. More modern therapies like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, focus on helping individuals process traumatic memories that may be repressed or suppressed. By combining recall with specific sensory input such as eye movements, EMDR aims to reduce the emotional charge of painful memories and make them more accessible for integration into conscious thought. Pharmacological research also explores compounds that can influence the process of memory reconsolidation, the period after retrieval when memories become malleable, offering potential pathways for enhancing recovery or reducing trauma-related memory distress. Neuroscience has revealed fascinating insights into memory reconsolidation, a process that challenges the old idea of memories as static once stored. When a memory is retrieved, it temporarily enters a labile state during which it can be altered before being saved again. This presents opportunities and dangers. It may allow memories to be updated or strengthened, but also risks introducing inaccuracies. Therapies and research that leverage reconsolidation seek to safely modify memories, either to recover lost content or to diminish harmful emotional associations. However, the fluidity and reconstructive nature of memory create profound challenges when trying to recover forgotten information. Memories are vulnerable to distortion from suggestion, bias, or imagination. This has given rise to the phenomenon of false memories, where people vividly believe in recollections of events that never occurred. False memory syndrome has had significant consequences in legal and therapeutic contexts, leading to wrongful accusations or personal trauma. Therefore, recovering memories demands extreme caution and validation, particularly when memories have serious emotional or legal implications. Real-world cases underscore both the promise and pitfalls of memory recovery. Some survivors of trauma have recalled forgotten abuse years later, leading to healing or justice, but also raising difficult questions about accuracy and suggestibility. In forensic investigations, recovered memories have helped solve cold cases, yet there have also been miscarriages of justice stemming from faulty recall. Patients with brain injuries or amnesia sometimes regain access to lost memories over time or through cognitive therapy, highlighting the brain's extraordinary adaptability. Sleep and dreams also play a vital role in memory consolidation and potential recovery. As we have seen in earlier chapters, sleep supports the reorganization and strengthening of memory traces. Some researchers propose that dream states might facilitate the reactivation of dormant memories, suggesting that enhancing certain sleep phases could aid recovery, although this remains an area ripe for further study. In our rapidly advancing digital era, emerging technologies offer unprecedented possibilities for exploring and recovering memories. Brain-computer interfaces capable of detecting neural activity patterns, neurofeedback techniques that train brain states, and artificial intelligence algorithms that analyze memory-related data are on the cutting edge of neuroscience. While these tools are still experimental, they hold promise for future breakthroughs in accessing and understanding the mind's archives. Despite these advances, ethical considerations are paramount. The process of recovering memories can be emotionally taxing and may unintentionally implant false memories or exacerbate psychological distress. Therapists and researchers emphasize informed consent, evidence-based methods, and safeguarding the well-being of individuals engaged in memory recovery. While total recovery of deeply forgotten memories may remain elusive for many, practical strategies can improve everyday recall and memory strength. Engaging multiple senses, revisiting meaningful places, practicing mindfulness, and maintaining detailed journals help reinforce memory pathways and provide cues for retrieval. At its core, the quest to recover forgotten memories touches on what it means to be human. Our memories are not only data, but form the narrative of our lives, shaping identity, relationships, and how we make sense of the world. The possibility of reclaiming lost memories offers hope for healing, self-discovery, and understanding, even as it challenges us to respect the fragile and malleable nature of memory. The archives of the mind are vast, mysterious, and constantly evolving. As science pushes forward, blending biology, psychology, technology, and ethics, the dream of unlocking forgotten memories inches closer to reality. Yet, with this power comes responsibility to honor the truth, protect the vulnerable, and embrace the complex beauty of our remembering selves.